Hello and welcome to Music Made Simple. Lesson 8, Ledger Lines. In Lesson 7, we learned about how to give permanent names to the treble staff and the bass staff. In this lesson, we are going to learn how to notate pitches that are higher or lower than the 5-line staff. Please watch Lesson 7 on the G and F clefs so that you can understand the names of the lines and spaces of the treble staff and the bass staff very well. That will help you to understand Lesson 8. We now know that pitch can be represented on the 5-line staff by putting notes on the lines, on the spaces, or both. Sometimes, however, there is a need to represent pitches that are higher or lower than the limits of the 5-line staff. In order to do this, short horizontal lines may be added above or below the staff and the notes put on them. These lines are called ledger lines. Note that the space between a staff line and a ledger line, and also the space between two ledger lines, should be equal to the space between any two staff lines. So, by definition, ledger lines are short horizontal lines written above or below the staff in order to represent pitches that are above or below the 5-line staff. Recall that the lines and spaces of the treble staff have permanent names. The lines are E, G, B, D, F, while the spaces are F, A, C, E. Let's now consider the ledger lines above the treble staff and derive their names. The space above the 5th line of the treble staff is G, because that's the letter name that follows F. Therefore, the first ledger line above the treble staff will be A. The space above the first ledger line will be B. The second ledger line will be C. The space above the second ledger line will be D. The third ledger line will be E. The space above the third ledger line will be F, and the fourth ledger line will be G. And we can go on and on like that, except that when the ledger lines are too many, they tend to be confusing. Going back down to the ledger lines below the staff, E is the name of the first line of the staff. Therefore, the first space below the staff will be D. The first ledger line will therefore be C, because I'm counting down now, not up. The first space below the first ledger line will be B. The second ledger line is A. The space below the second ledger line is G. Since I've exhausted the alphabets, I've stopped at A, so I have to start at G again since I'm going down now. The third ledger line will therefore be F. The space below the third ledger line will be E, and the fourth ledger line will be D. Note that I'm calling the spaces with the name of the ledger line. The space above the first ledger line, the space above the second ledger line, the space below the third ledger line, That's the technical way of referring to them. For the bass staff, the names of the lines are GBDFA and the spaces are ACEG. To derive the names of the ledger lines above the bass staff, let's note that A is the name of the fifth line of the bass staff. Therefore, the space above the fifth line of the bass staff will be B. The first ledger line above the bass staff will therefore be C. The space above the first ledger line will be D. The second ledger line is E. The space above the second ledger line is F. The third ledger line is G. The space above the third ledger line is A. And the fourth ledger line will be B. Now, notice that the first ledger line below the treble staff and the first ledger line above the bass staff have the same name, C. In fact, they are the same, and they correspond to the key that is called C on the piano keyboard. Is the middle C. That's the note in the middle of the piano keyboard. It's a C, and it corresponds to this particular first ledger line below the treble staff and first ledger line above the bass staff. You can see here, when I put the picture of a piano there, that is C that is sounding now, C. Now, the ledger lines below the bass staff. Remember that the first line of the bass staff is G, and I'm counting downwards now, so I have to reverse my alphabets. So the space below the bass staff will be F. The first ledger line below the bass staff will be E. The space below the first ledger line is D. The second ledger line below the bass staff will be C. The space below that will be B. The third ledger line below the bass staff will be A. The space below that will be G. Because I've finished A, I have to go back to G. And then the fourth ledger line below the bass staff is F. In this lesson, we have learned how to extend the notation of pitches that are higher or lower than the 5-line staff for both the treble staff and the bass staff. Next lesson, we are going to learn about how to combine these two staves together, the treble staff and the bass staff, in order to make one big staff that is called the great staff. That's it for today, folks. Thank you very much for watching. Please don't forget to subscribe by clicking the red button below the video in case you have not done so that you can continue to get updates of new videos as they come out. And also, if you have enjoyed this lesson, please click like. Until next time, God bless you.